This Thing Called Life is a podcast dedicated to exploring the twists, turns, and transformative moments that shape our lives and the lives of others. It is a space where we can share our experiences so we can learn, grow, and empower change. You're listening to This Thing Called Life. I am your host, Atlas. Today, our guest is Lester E Crowell JR. Lester is a two-time heart transplant recipient and managing partner of Thre-13 Salon, Spa, and Boutique. Lester shares his story, given a second chance at life not only once, but twice, after undergoing 2 heart transplant surgeries. Lester is the founder of Angels of Life, a fundraiser with a mission to support and celebrate those touched by organ transplantation. We start the conversation where his journey began at the age of 13 years old, when he was diagnosed with a congenital heart condition that would shape the course of his life.
Heart failure. I didn't know what any of it meant really until I started feeling bad and getting worse and worse. And by the time I was 43, I was in bad congestive heart failure. I couldn't have this conversation because I couldn't talk and breathe at the same time as much. Didn't have this much breath. What happened to me is I had a heart muscle problem. A lot of people, when they have heart problems, they have like blockages, cholesterol buildup. It stops the blood from going to the muscle. The muscle dies, lack of oxygen. Mine was a completely different issue, sort of like a worn out heart. And it sort of gradually got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the smaller a heart is, the more it squeezes down and pumps the blood to your body. Well, the bigger it gets, it's harder to squeeze down and pump the blood to your body, which in turn stops from all your fluids from eliminating properly. And you start building up with fluids and you can't breathe and your heart just gets weaker and weaker and bigger and bigger. And they give you medicine to try to make it stronger, but some people it doesn't last very well, doesn't work very well. And I was one of those. So by the time I was 43, I pretty much needed a heart transplant. My mother, who was getting really sick, she was 69 and she passed away in August of 1999. And by the time February came in 2000, I got this virus and I couldn't recover from it. I was so weak from my heart failure, but also the virus made me even weaker. I went to see my general practitioner and he said, "Lester, you're in bad heart failure. You need to go to Emory and see Dr. Andrew Smith." Just so happens my general practitioner was a fellow down at Emory. He had really chosen to go into the cardiac world and into heart failure. But halfway through it, he decided to change, change his I guess his specialty and went to more general practitioner. And so, but he knew everyone at Emory. So he sent me down immediately to Emory. They checked me into the hospital that day, did all the tests for a heart transplant. And I was on the list. But that was a Thursday. They let me out of the hospital. And they said I really wouldn't be on the list officially until they got a letter from my insurance company. So they actually got the letter that next Monday, and they had an appointment with Dr. Smith to come back on Friday of that week to see if I was able to stay out of the hospital. So I went back at 1:00 that day on Friday. Now I'd just been put on the list for almost a week, not even. And I was talking to him about how long would it be. I mean, I had not even grasped the fact that I was going to get a heart transplant, really, or I was really on the list because I hadn't even been on it hardly, but for a week. And he's told me, well, you're A negative. I do have a different blood type. Sometimes people get it pretty quick. There's not a lot of people on the list, A negative, but also we don't get a lot of donors, A negative. He said probably 6 months. Well, I went home that day and they called me that night. And I did not have time to even grasp the idea that I might get a heart transplant. I mean, I was trying to still recover from the virus, feeling terrible. And I tell you, I really didn't process it at all until they called me that night. It was a pretty shock when I picked up the phone at 1:00 and AM. I thought it was something to do with the building that we had our salon and spa in. We owned the building, and it was a little old. We were getting ready to move out of it in about a year, and there was a back door there that caused the alarm to go off multiple times. I thought when that phone rang at 1 o'clock, that was them. It was the alarm company. What's wrong with the back door now? Instead, it was the transplant coordinator. And she says, Lester, have you had any infections in the last 2 weeks? And I thought, boom, my mind would not, I couldn't think. I could not answer her question. So I turned to my wife and said, have I had any infections in the last 2 weeks? And she said, no. And I told them no. And they said, well, can you be down here in what, 45 minutes? I said, yeah. I called my father and I said, Dad, they just called me for a heart transplant. And he said, well, do you want me to come down there? I said, it wasn't funny at the time, but after looking back at it, like, really, Dad, are you asking me, do I want you to come see him? He said, I don't even know why I asked that question. I'm definitely coming down there. I'll meet you there. And the next morning they took me and I got my first heart transplant. That was April 15th, 2000. So, that my mother couldn't get a heart transplant because she was a smoker. And they were, she wasn't exactly too old. She was only 65 when it was discovered. She lived to 69, but because she was a heavy smoker, they wouldn't even consider it. And then her brother, my uncle, he died at 40. He had 3 kids that all 3 of them needed a heart transplant. The oldest one was a year older than me. She would not get it due to religious purposes. And her brother in the middle, he got a heart transplant before I did. So she is living with her brother in the same town who got a heart transplant, but she wouldn't do it. And then the youngest one, she lived to be 56 before she got her heart transplant. But all 3 of his children had the same heart muscle
What was it
problem.
like?
So
I feel like everyone around you is either unable to get, and it's people that are close to you, maybe more distant from you, but there's all these people around you that are either unable to get the transplant or refuse to. And here you are that, it happened really quickly. And I'm wondering what that was like.
I didn't have time to think about it really. I mean, when we were driving down to the hospital that morning, um, I I all I could think about is, am I going to live? Even though they tell you then, and I'm sure it's higher now, that the success rate for 1 year was 92%. That's a high rate. But still, when you think of they're going to take your heart out of your body and put another one in, that sounds too intense. That you think in your mind that the success rate is probably lower than the 92%, but of course their statistics are correct. And I was just very nervous about it, very scared about it, very shocked that they'd called me already. And another thing I found out that night was they call multiple people. You may not be the perfect match. So they have 3 candidates they call, uh, somewhat like that. And they do test the organ even more once they get it in their hands. And that's when they finally decide, are they going to transplant it? And I just happened to be the better match. Even though I have to say I really wasn't a great match for that heart. I had issues with it. Um, they had these tests for rejection, and the scores are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you have 0, of course you want 0 rejection. And then there's 1 mild rejection. Sometimes they don't do anything about it. 2, 3, and 4, you're critical if you're 4. Well, I was 3A in the 3rd week. So I had pretty good rejection, and it's acute rejection. It's like my body's rejecting the organ, and they kept saying, we just need to get your medicine right. Well, it took them 3 to 4 weeks to get that medicine right. So the whole time, that first 3 to 4 weeks, um, is really like 5 weeks altogether. They were giving me high doses of prednisone and solumedrol, and which are steroids to stop the acute rejection. And then on the other hand, they're giving me immune suppressants. Those are 2 separate things. Steroids for acute rejection, immune suppressants to keep your immune system low so the body won't reject it. It took almost 4 weeks to get the rejection gone. I'm not sure if that damaged the heart or if I just wasn't an overall good fit. I had little issues with the here and there. I went into AFib. They had to do an ablation where they go in and they sort of cauterize a part in the heart. That was in my 6th or 7th year. By the time my 8th year came around, I was having chest pain. They said, well, it's not from your heart because we cut the vagus nerve. You wouldn't even feel it if you had a heart attack. And I said, well, I'm feeling it. And I've had chest pain since I was 13. And I think I know what it feels like. I think it's my heart. Well, they did a nuclear stress test in February of my 9th year and they found nothing. But then once a year, they do this catheterization. They go up in your leg. They shoot dye into your heart. It's the most accurate test to see if someone has blockages in their heart. And I was 40, 50, and 90 blocked in the 3 main arteries in my heart. And it was blocked sort of from the edges that, the edges of the vein supplying the muscle, and they couldn't stent it, which was weird. But I'm the kind of person that had been growing these small veins or arteries to bypass the bypass. Some people do that. I didn't find this out until I went through it, that some people have the ability when they start having blockages in these arteries in their hearts, that they'll start growing these smaller veins to go around it naturally. A lot of people don't have that, but that helped me live longer. And they did all the tests at that point, my 9th year, and they said I was a candidate, of course, again. Because I had no other physical issues. I was not diabetic. I had no diseases. I was in good health. I was a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian for probably 45 years. And I was a candidate, but my muscle was beating still too good for them to actually list me. There's an organization called UNOS, UNOS, and they're the ones that decide if you go on the list. And they would not list me. It was out of Emory's hands. And Emory kept telling me that my heart it was working too good to be able to list me. So that December, I'd been calling them and corresponding and seeing if, I can go on the list. And they kept telling me no. I kept bugging them. Well, I had a light heart attack in December, and that put me on the list. I went into the hospital. I stayed for a little while, about 4 days. They told me I had a small artery that they call clipped off in the back of my heart, but that's what listed me. Well, then I waited a whole nother year. They didn't call me till December 3rd of 2010, when I was getting really, really bad. I actually my blockages got worse, and I actually got a stent in November of 2010, right before they did the second transplant. Well, when you get a stent, it has a little bit of metal in it, and you have to take this blood thinner called Plavix. Everyone has to take that, or they used to. It could have changed in 10 years, but I had to take that, and there's no antidote for the blood thinner. They can't stop the thinness of the blood. Now, if you're on just a regular blood thinner like Coumadin or something like that, they have an antidote like vitamin K. But if you're on this Plavix, there is no antidote. They have to wait for that to wear off. So when they called me for that second heart transplant on December 3rd, 2010, they asked me, when did I take that last? I said, well, today's Friday. I took it yesterday morning, Thursday. I'm supposed to take it in the morning. They said, don't take it today. It's like 5:30 in the morning. I said, okay, and come down to Emory. It's weird because the same thing happened on that second call. So I'm laying in bed. I didn't sleep very well at all. On my first heart transplant, when you have congestive heart failure, you can't really lay flat. You're in too much fluid inside. You can't breathe. So you have to sit up to even sleep, and you don't sleep that much. Second one, I didn't sleep that much either. They called me at 5:30 in the morning, and I was shocked again because I forgot I was on the transplant list. And they call me and like Lester Crowell, and I'm like, yeah, who's calling me at 5:30 in the morning? This is the transplant coordinator. Oh yeah, I'm on the list. And they said, and I was really proud of this too. They said, "How long can you be down here?" And I said, "45 minutes." They said, "Well, meet us at the G Unit." And I'm like, "G Unit? Well, that's appropriate because, I like hip hop, so I'll see you at the G Unit to get a heart transplant." Um, but, I went down and they didn't even take me until that night. I laid there all day long. I guess they were letting the Plavix try to wear out of my system. They took me that night, and the next morning, they're in contact with my family the whole time. The heart's out, the new heart's in, the new heart's beating. Just keep calling them. Well, that morning they said they came to my room, and the surgeon, Doctor Vega, who did both surgeries, he was outside of my room, sort of sleeping on a desk, had his head down. And when they approached him, they could see how much blood was on his, scrubs, on his shoes and everything. And as they approached, he sort of woke up and they said, "How did it go?" All this stuff. He said the worst thing was trying to get me to stop bleeding because of this Plavix. Once that he finally got that under control, it was all good and everything went normal. But they couldn't really stop the bleeding. So, and I was laying there, and during that second recovery, I thought, we ought to do something to give back. I've got a big salon and spa. I've got like 80 plus employees, and I have experience. I have a friend named Don Shaw. He has a big salon here in Atlanta. He has multiple ones. And his uh, daughter was like pregnant in 1999. So during her pregnancy, they discovered that she had melanoma on her back. Well, they couldn't really give her radiation or chemotherapy or anything because she was pregnant. Well, by the time she had the baby, it was too late, and at that time, 1999, there was nothing that could be done with melanoma anyway. It was a death sentence, pretty much. He started this event called You Can Make a Difference to benefit MD Anderson in, Texas, who's a big cancer institute out there, and he started this event where he did a fashion show, and then he, had a silent auction and a live auction, and after she died in February of 2000. I got my first heart transplant April 15th, 2000. Well, after got well, he kept doing these events for like 7 years straight called You Can Make a Difference. Well, I joined in with him and started helping him a lot with it, and I got a lot of experience doing these big events. He'd have like 3 or 4, 500 people there, and he'd write checks to donate to MD Anderson. So as I'm recovering from my second heart transplant, my surgeon walks in the door, Dr. Vega, to check me. I was like my first day really awake. And I was thinking about doing something, and I know I play the lottery all the time. I said to him, Dr. Vega, I play the lottery all the time. If I were to win, who would I donate to? And he just immediately said the Georgia Transplant Foundation. At that point, I had no idea who that was. It's an organization. They help people in Georgia. If you go to the hospital and you can't pay your way to the hospital. You can't pay your mortgage because you've got to be in the hospital waiting for a transplant. You can't pay your utilities. You can't pay your health insurance. They will step in and do that for you. They also have a during transplant program. They have a house that you can stay right near Emory. It has multiple sort of hotel rooms type thing. They do mentoring. If you're waiting for a transplant, you can hook up with a mentor, someone who's had it done before, and they can guide you through it. They can also have programs to train you for a new career afterwards and continue to help you financially. So I found all this out after the fact. And because I had that experience with Don Shaw, I started texting my director of operations. Her name is Christina Herrera about doing this event. And she's texting me back saying, like, "What kind of drugs are you on? What are you talking about?" And we actually did our first event. That was in December. So our first event, we actually had it in July, and we called it Angels of Life. I was laying there in the hospital bed, and I'm thinking, what's the name of this? And I thought,
Mhm.
people that donate organs are angels because they give life. So Angels of Life. And we had our first one in July. We raised 23,000 and donated it
I
to
mean,
the
what
Georgia
a
Transplant
journey.
Foundation.
I mean,
So,
um from I mean, from when you were little to the first transplant and the second, uh, and I'm wondering through this, through this up and down journey. Often I think we think transplant, it's, after the transplant, it's sort of you're out of the woods, but it's obvious that there's so much more happening after the surgery. And, I would imagine it's physically and emotionally and mentally an exhausting procedure from beginning to middle and to end. And I'm wondering, through this whole journey, what do you feel like was the most challenging aspect of this whole process? And, how'd you get through it? I mean, what were some of the ways that kinda helped you get through this, this journey of the heart?
Well, my family was right there for me. My employees were there for me. I my first one, um, because I was in rejection, they gave me high doses of steroids intravenously. I got you always get emotional on steroids, like prednisone. When you get it for a cold or something, but this is like really high doses. And I was extremely emotional about the fact that someone had to die for me to live. I felt like I was trading issues that I had for other issues. Is this really worth it? That was a lot going on in that first few months of my first heart transplant because I was having so many issues. And then that heart transplant just wasn't, I guess, right for me. It wasn't a great match, even though I guess they thought it was. I'm not sure. With that AFib that I had, with the blockages that I got. It's a common thing for organ transplant organs to get cholesterol buildup. That's very common from the immune suppressants that we take, and it happened to me. So I don't know. That first transplant was just a up and down and up and down, and that's what I'd been living through already, up and down since my early late 30s, early 40s. The second one though went so smooth. Yeah, I didn't have any problems. I never had any rejection. The first one I had to be out of work for 6 months. The second one only 3 months. The first one, I was very upset about missing work, missing my employees. We have a tight family here, even though there's 80 of us. And I really was interested in wanting to get back to work as soon as I could. And I still did after the second one. We're open 7 days a week. I work at least 5 of those days. And I'm usually on the phone or texting to somebody here at work. So I'm very involved in my employees, which I like, and my family. They're the ones that help me through the process. And I guess I'm just really determined too, wanting to live, wanting to get the heart transplant, wanting to continue life.
And I
So
really
I
like
just sort
I
of
mean, it
have to
seems
push
like,
through it.
work was a contributing factor and work helped you sort of take your mind off of things. And that can totally be a way to kind of help us sort of cope through
Yes.
any sort of stressful situation. Also, it feels like there's one family, it's like, the family that you're born into, but it sounds like you have like a family in the people you work with too. And it's sort of created somewhat of a family system outside the family that was like a wonderful way to support you through this I mean just exhausting time period.
Yeah. And you know what? That family, that salon family continued to support me, especially after my second heart transplant. And we sort of developed this event called Angels of Life. As I told you before, I was laying there in my hospital bed, just thinking I mean, I think a lot of people who get organ donation, get a transplant, they want to give back. They're very grateful. They want to do something for their community. They want to give back, but they just don't know what to do. They don't know where to turn. They think they can do it by themselves, and I'll try to do something. I'll do an event. I'll sell some T-shirts. I'll do this. I'll do that, and ultimately, they just don't know where to turn to, and it fails. But I turned when he told me the Georgia Transplant Foundation. I went to them, and they helped me get started. But I had so many people here at the salon who were backing me, who were helping me, that we eventually didn't need their help. I was just nervous about that first one because, like, all my employees here help me in every event. It started off that first one, we were doing car washes, we were doing bake sales, and then we had this event, a fashion show. The second year, we dropped the car wash because that was too much trouble, it was too much work. But then we continued these bake sales. So we have 5 bake sales leading up to the event. It's on a Saturday, and it's every other Saturday for 10 weeks. And my employees actually bake savory and sweet items, and they bring them on a Saturday. Our clients buy all this stuff, and then the employee brings stuff, and they end up buying stuff from the other employee for their lunch. So, we raised almost 25,000 for those bake sales. And then the day of the event, we get 32 models. There's 24 women and 8 men, and we split it to 4 categories. Well, the morning of the event on Sunday, like this year is Sunday the 25th of October, they'll bring all the models here to our salon and spa. They'll do their hair, they'll do their makeup, and then they'll dress them in the 4 different boutiques that loan us their clothes for the night. They'll come down to the event. The models will come down and do a dress rehearsal, and then our event starts around 4:30. We started off with drinks, hors d'oeuvres, and we have like a 300 plus silent auction. And at 6 o'clock, after they've been sort of perusing the silent auction, having drinks and hors d'oeuvres, the actual show starts at 6. We started off usually with a runway walk. So we'll do 6 women, 2 men, and they'll do a high fashion, high energy walk to a song that one of the head of that team picked out. Then we stop and we go to a video of someone who's had a heart transplant or a liver or a kidney. We do a story on a transplant recipient. We do what I'm doing now. We start off with what happened to them, why, what happened to them during the transplant, and how are they now. Of course, we have to condense that into like 4.5 minutes. Then we bring them out on stage, and right there live, we ask them how the Georgia Transplant Foundation helped them. And then we start over and do it again. We do 4 different segments that way that night, and we do a Halo Award. We present an award that year to someone who's helped Angels of Life, more that year than any other. And we do a live auction after every runway show too. So, this last year, we donated 119,000 to the Georgia Transplant Foundation. I think we've donated 1,152,000, something like that, to the Georgia Transplant
That's
Foundation.
it's wonderful. I
So
mean,
that's pretty good.
Lester, I
Proud of it.
imagine it's this event is sort of like a celebration of life. Like I feel as though you were given a heart, given a life, and I feel like you want to give back, right? You want to give back life and
Right,
celebrate life, and there's things
right,
leading up to the event, and then there's the fashion and modeling and just high energy, and everyone's excited and celebrating, and then you bring on these people that have these wonderful stories
right.
and how you and the Georgia Foundation has changed their lives. And I feel like it's a celebration of life in many ways.
It really is. The Georgia Transplant Foundation has their own event once a year. It's usually between February and April. This year it's February 28th. They actually call their event Celebrate Life, like you just said. And they do similar things. They have more doctors that come to their event only because they've been around since 1991. And that's just sort of where they started from. But yeah, it's all about that, about celebrating life. And we tell how we learn so many things too in the different transplant stories that we tell. That something I learned a long time ago is that when you get a kidney transplant, they don't take your other kidneys out. They leave those in and they put a new kidney in. And they only usually put one in because even you sitting there right now and me sitting here too, we're only utilizing one of our kidneys. One is our strongest kidney, and that's the one who does most of the work. The other one is sort of dormant. Everybody is that way. And so when they do a kidney transplant, they only really replace one and they put it on top of the kidney. The heart transplant, they take the heart out. A liver transplant, they may take the whole liver, but if you're gonna donate, if you're gonna be a living liver donator, then they may take half of your liver and give it to me, and both of our livers will generate up to a full liver. And I don't know why they don't do more living donor liver transplants. They don't.
What are
Um,
some
and I
stories that
still can't figure out
that
why.
y'all showcase in your celebrations? Do any particular story come to mind?
Well, 2 years ago, there was a lady who was waiting for a kidney transplant. She had, I can't remember the disease she had for many years. She was suffering 11, 12, 15 years, which I think it was lupus that damaged her kidney more and more. And she could not get a match. She needed, besides the other disease, she um, couldn't get a match for her kidney. And she went years and years. She one time went down, thought they had a match, and they just decided at the very last minute it wasn't right for her. So, excuse me, as she's waiting for this kidney, her best friend, who lived on the same street as her, had a 20-year-old daughter who went out for a bike ride. Well, that daughter got hit by a car and was pretty much brain dead. So the best friend calls the lady who's waiting for a kidney transplant, telling her her grief, and says to the lady, knowing that she's been waiting for a kidney, "I'm going to have my daughter tested to see if she's a match." Boom, she was a total match. And this lady had been waiting for a kidney for years and years, and just a freak accident, living 2 doors down, her daughter gets, in a tragic accident, and boom, she's a total match, and she gets the kidney. That was just shocking to me. It was one of the most shocking ones, and coincidence, that we've told. And a lot of people that have liver transplants, they need a liver now. Most of them that we've highlighted in over the 16 years that we've done it, they go to the hospital, they don't know what's wrong with them, and in 2 weeks, you need a kidney or you're not gonna make it, and they get
Um,
it. It's really
Listening
strange.
to the story, I feel like there's a lot of angels involved in some of these stories that you showcase in your fundraiser. Um, the other thing that I wanted to ask you is, how has this celebration, this fundraiser changed over the years, and how do you foresee it changing in the future?
Well, we moved, to a new venue last year, to the Marriott Northwest, and right outside of, the Battery where the Braves play, and, we, we sort of, told the story. We actually told my story, the 2 heart transplants, and we told a little bit of my story the whole time and saved my story for the end to wrap it up. We it's a very dressy event if you wanna be. People like to dress up and like to have a few cocktails and, like to just have a good time. We also, um broadcasted on Facebook every year. You can watch the whole thing on Facebook, and that's from our website, 313.com. We actually have an Angels of Life tab on our website that you can go to that tab, and you can see all the years that we've done it, videos, pictures, why we do it, who the Georgia Transplant Foundation is, and, somewhat my story. So I think it's, hopefully getting bigger. More attendance is what we'd like, more people that we can relate the stories to, because that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to raise awareness of, what happens to people when they need a transplant. Why is it so important to donate organs? When we first started this back in 2011, I turned on the TV and I saw a movie called Return to Me with Minnie Driver. It's about this doctor or someone that him and his wife go to an event. They get in a bad car accident on the way home that night. She gets killed. The husband doesn't know what to do. He's lost in his world. He goes down the street to a restaurant, meets a waitress, starts dating her. She's actually waiting for a heart transplant. She has a bad heart. Um, before he met her, she actually got a heart transplant. And what happened was she got his wife's heart, but he didn't know that. So as he goes down the street to have dinner and meets her and starts dating her, he never knew that the heart that she got was his wife's. What the way that he found out, or she found out, was she wrote a letter to her donor, and they don't tell you who your donor is. And the letter was mailed to him. And one night they were going to go out. And he said, I left something on my dresser up in my room. Will you get it for me? She runs up there to get it. And boom, there's the letter she wrote. And she discovers that, oh my God, I have his wife's heart, and freaks out and runs to Paris, and he chases her. But my point being that there was hardly anything on TV about transplants back in 2011. And as time came on, and I've had a heart transplant now for 25 years, more and more and more TV news articles. There's so much more about transplant in our just everyday life on like Chicago Med, every other week. It's a show on, I think, CBS. And every other week, someone comes into the emergency room and they need a heart transplant, and they've got one in the back room they can give. I mean, that's a little exaggerated, but it's just become so commonplace in our society now.
What are some misconceptions that you feel like are still exist about transplants or heart transplants?
I can't even believe that the one that that they may take you if you're just slightly, damaged. And, if there's a chance you're gonna make it, they still might take, your body for organ transplant. That's an old myth, and really can't believe that anybody still believes that. But I think it still is a myth. It's a very rocky road on, what happens after a transplant. That's why we have mentors, because people who say, "Hey, my doctor told me I need a transplant. What happened to you?" I mean, I got better. I was in better shape after my transplant, even the first one, than I had been since probably in my early teens, before I even started having problems. I could do any physical activity after that. Um, I've met people in stories that we've told that have been a diabetic all their life, and at one point, they needed a kidney transplant, and the, hospital decided to do a kidney pancreas transplant. They're no longer diabetic. So it can change. You can go from really sick, like you're about to die, because 'cause you're not gonna get a transplant unless you really are that sick, to a whole new life, and it can be even better than the one you were already living.
Can you tell me more about this
That's how
mentorship?
important
Or
it can
is there
be.
like a mentorship program, or do they kind of do people kind of match you with people that have kind of gone through this? Are there groups that you all can kind of come together and sort of talk about, what it's like? Because it's a unique experience, right, to go through this.
Well, through the Georgia Transplant Foundation, that's one of their programs, mentorship. They recruit people that have had any really type of transplant, and they teach them certain things about how to handle situations. And then they have people that are waiting for a transplant who is who some of the social workers at hospitals, they, I guess, refer them to the Georgia Transplant to have a mentor, because these people are very um, nervous about what's going to happen to them. They want to talk to someone who's had it to see what they say. I personally didn't have time to think about that. My first one, I was only on it 5 days. The second one, I already sort of knew about it, but, yeah, a lot of people don't. They're really on the fence about whether I wanna do this or not. And I would say if you only knew how much better you're gonna be, there's no way you should be even wishy-washy about it. You should definitely do it. A transplant's gonna save your life and change your life and make you
What a
pretty
wonderful
much
thing that
back to the
the
way
the
you were or
Georgia,
better.
Foundation does, and I feel like they take care of you in so many different ways. You had mentioned rather, they do these mentorships, these groups. They can help you financially. They can house you. They can help you with transportation. I feel like they can help you in every aspect of this journey.
They can, they'll help, like, say, if just say if your child, goes to the hospital, um, you're not going to work. You're gonna go with your child, you're gonna be at the hospital, and you're going to, sit with them until they get that transplant. So at that point, if you're going to the hospital with your child, you're not working. You're not making money. You might not can pay your house payment, you might not can pay your car payment, you can't pay your health insurance, can't put food on the table. That's what the Georgia Transplant Foundation does, besides the mentoring program. They will help with medicine, they'll help with, stays near the hospital, at the Mason House, while you're recovering. They have a, post-transplant program, some uh, companies that are hooked up to take people to train them in new fields or get them back into the work program. They offer a lot, and it's right now just in Georgia. That's the reason it's called the Georgia Transplant Foundation. It's really just for people that live in Georgia. It's very local.
The last thing I want to ask you, well, there are a couple things. And one of them is if someone that was listening that maybe they themselves were about to or going to get a transplant, or maybe a family member of someone that was going to go through this journey. I'm wondering if you could give like if there's some advice you could give someone that was themselves going through this journey, or a loved one that was going through this journey.
Well, I would just say that to uh, keep moving forward, be very positive about it, listen to your doctors, don't listen to um, the internet or to Facebook or to social media. If you need a question answered, go straight to the source, straight to people that have, experienced this. It'll change your life. It'll definitely be worth it. Whether you're thinking about, should I do this? You definitely should. You will be living a normal life again on the primary. Most people will be like that. And of course, your doctors will advise you um, how well you can be. Not everybody has such an easy time, maybe as I did. I sort of say that because I only had a heart problem. I only had a heart muscle problem. I had no other. I didn't have diabetic. I didn't have any other diseases that put me in the shape that I was in. And I know some people do have that, and they're still going to struggle somewhat with that. But, with a new heart or a new organ, like a liver or a kidney or a pancreas, it's gonna correct a lot of your issues and bring you back to a good life. I would definitely consider, tell everyone, to do it and tell their loved ones to go ahead with it, to follow the path that their doctors, um, definitely suggest to them.
How can listeners support you in your foundation?
Well, Angels of Life is just an event that we do, through our salon and spa. All the benefits, all the money that we collect past the exact cost, we donate to the Georgia Transplant Foundation. So to see what our next event is, see the years that we've, done this event, the videos, the pictures, see who the Georgia Transplant Foundation is, you can go on our website, 313.com. Three is spelled out because THREE dash the number one, the number three. That means three people, 13's a lucky number, and that's the name of our salon, 313 Salon Spa and Boutique. And on our website is an Angels tab. And that Angels tab will show you all of the years that we've done it. It shows you which year, what's coming up for this year, October 25th. And there's sponsorships there, there's tickets there. I know it's a little far in advance right now, since right now we're recording this in February. But still, that's where you can see everything that is available to you. Even the Georgia Transplant Foundation, their website, they have donation buttons. They have the events that other people like me are doing for them. They're actually having their gala at the end of the February 28th this year. So you can donate to that. People that tend to have someone in their family that's affected by organ donation, want to get involved, I think.
The other thing is about donating time and services. I know that there's the auction, that you'll have an auction, and people, it sounds like people donate anything and everything. I mean, what are some examples of what people that are, listeners, what can they donate?
Oh, we have sponsorships available too, but they can donate. We're really known a lot for our gift certificates for restaurants, restaurant experiences. We also offer trips and stays in some of our um, recipients' second homes type of thing. Airbnb. We have this one person who supports this company that supports us greatly, Star Coach, and they donate a cabin up in the North Georgia mountains every year. Um, and we're known for trips, like trips to the Caribbean, trips to Rome, things like that. We also have had in the past a wave runner at every one of our auctions. That's supplied by Yamaha, and so we've had in our silent auction oil changes for cars. We had a water heater last year, the brand new water heater donated by a plumbing company. We had uh, gifts by like jewelry from Cumberland Diamond Store. A lot of different places. We had over 300 items in our silent auction. Sports memorabilia, all that is open to our whatever it is, we'll put it in the silent auction. And then the big ticket items um, is what we do on the live auction. When we're on stage and we do that fashion walk, and then we tell a story about a transplant recipient, then we do the live auction right after that recipient's story, because then people are really feeling the message. They're feeling what really happens to people that are, waiting for a transplant, and how the Georgia Transplant Foundation actually helped them. So they see where their money is going too. It's not a huge organization, such as ones that you don't know exactly, how much administration is going on, how much is taken out of that, what real money gets down to the people that need it. We know the Georgia Transplant Foundation, it's 85% or more. I can't remember the exact percentage at the minute, but 85 plus percent goes to the actual recipients, the people that are needing the help.
Lester continues his life of gratitude in Atlanta, Georgia, where he manages 313 Salon, Spa, and Boutique, and raises money every October for his foundation, Angels of Life. For more information on Angels of Life and ways to sponsor or donate, click the link below. If you enjoyed this episode, you can support the show by liking, sharing, or subscribing wherever you're listening. You can find us online at thisthingcalledlife.center. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, visit thisthingcalledlife.center/contact. Until next time, thank you for listening and being with us on This Thing Called Life.